Hello everyone, how are you doing? I hope that you are doing so very well. Today I'm going to talk to you about all the books that I read in the month of July. Hey! Before we jump into talking about the books, I want to talk about a few things first. I said Read It All Away was lasting June and July, but I am not quite done with Alexander Hamilton the biography, so Read It All Away is extending into August because I need another month to finish it. Join me, hashtag Read It All Away. For Kindness Challenge, last month's challenge was to give one of your books to someone else. I gave my sister a copy of This Savage Song because I got it from Amazon. Then I got it in an owl crate and I was like, I don't need 2 copies. Then Amazon didn't need my copy back, so I gave that copy to my sister. I really want to actually go through my shelf when I have time and do this process a little bit more. Next month, I'm going to challenge you to just smile at one person a day. It's real simple, but it's something that I need to work on and that I think we can all work on. I really want to try to smile at as many people as I can. I would encourage you to do the same unless you feel very uncomfortable doing that. Like if you're walking alone on the street and there's some people staring at you weirdly, you don't need to smile at those people. You don't need to look at them. But if you're in the grocery store and you just walk by someone, just smile at them instead of looking at your phone. It's a really simple thing to do to spread some love in the world, and the world needs a lot more love, especially nowadays. And now that those things are out of the way, let's get into the books. July was a pretty freaking good reading month for me, considering there was Booktubeathon, which I last minute decided to participate in. I read 7 books during that week, so that bumped me up a lot. Last month was also a month for audiobooks, and I listened to 6 audiobooks, which is ridiculous. So many books. First up, I've got The Opposite of Loneliness by Maureenkeavy. This was a book that fell right in the middle for me. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it like some people do. These are stories and essays written by Maureenkeavy, who died tragically after her graduation from Yale. There's a fiction section and there's a non-fiction section. I found myself more drawn to the fiction section and kind of asking more about those characters after the stories were done. But I didn't think that she was God's gift to writing, if you know what I'm saying. Her essays were good, but they weren't incredible. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we've got The Boundless by Kenneth Opel. This was another Booktubeathon read for me. It was my after sunset read, which I didn't get to read a lot during the week, but then Saturday night I just finished out and I was like, I gotta get it done. It's about a boy named Will and his adventures on this super long train. The descriptions of the different train cars were so cool. There was one that was an aquarium and had fish going underneath you, and there was a pool, and it was crazy ridiculous and fancy. There were some plot holes in here and some things that didn't really totally make sense, but overall it was a pretty fun, magical-ish feeling book. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite authors, and I love reading his books because they really hit you hard. Feeling a little bit convicted about that. This is a collection of different talks and different sermons that he gave in different contexts. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The last few essays, especially the one about forgiveness, were all so good and really were the ones that hit me hard. I did listen to this as an audiobook, and I listened to it for Booktubeathon as my first book, so I was kind of rushing through, and I feel like if I sat down and physically read it and had a little bit more time, I would enjoy it more. It was still really good. C.S. Lewis is still super convicting, and all his arguments are so logical and make so much sense. That is one of the reasons I love him as a writer. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I've got Everything Everything by Nicole Yoon. If you don't know, Everything Everything is about a girl named Madeline who has this very rare disease where she's basically allergic to everything, so she can't go outside. She is confined to her house. Then a boy moves in next door and things happen as they do. I really liked this book as well, though I didn't love it. I know a lot of people love it and say it's one of their all-time favorite books, and I don't think I was quite at that level, but I really enjoyed it. Possibly one of the reasons I wasn't at that level was because I listened to the audiobook, which I would not really recommend. The girl who narrated Madeline made her sound like she was 13 years old and super whiny, and it was just no thank you. And also there are pictures and multimedia aspects to this book that are one of the main reasons I would recommend the physical copy. I'm really glad I had the physical copy to look through. One of my main things with this book was that a lot of Madeline's motivation was driven by this romance with this boy that she didn't know super well. Which romance is a great thing, but I really enjoy heroines that have some other motivator besides romance, and kind of towards the end of this book that happens, but definitely at the beginning, she is just totally set on romance, and that's like it. That's the whole plot, is romance. So I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. Though the romance was super cute and was super fun, I just wish there would have been a little bit more beyond that. And the main character is a woman of color, so we got some representation there, which I really enjoyed seeing. I like having a not stereotypically white narrator. It's a really great change. I read this for Booktubeathon, and I'm really glad that I did. It was my book that was recommended to me by a booktube or a booktuber, so yes. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we've got The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer. This is about a group of friends that meet at a summer camp for the arts, and the story just follows them throughout their adult lives, and that's pretty much it. I love that these characters were wonderfully flawed. They weren't perfect at all, and that's one of the reasons they were more fun to read about. And they also kind of felt like people you would know. The style of the book also jumped around from early on in their lives to later on in their lives, and talking about things in kind of a sporadic order. And I really liked that style of narration. It kept things interesting, it kept things moving, and it's really good for this particular story. I also listened to the audiobook of this, and I really liked the audiobook. The narrator did a fantastic job, did different voices for the characters, but it didn't sound cheesy and weird, and it was really well done. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we've got The Trials of Apollo, The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. This is about the god Apollo. Zeus is mad at him because of what happened in the Heroes of Olympus series that I'm not gonna spoil for you, but 6 months after that series, he is sent to Earth as a normal teenager, and he has to accomplish some things before he can become a god again. This book was so funny. Apollo's narration was hilarious. The story was good. It was a solid first book, and I'm excited to see glimpses of our favorite characters that we've seen in the past. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a trigger warning for this, but it had some commentary on relationships, and especially abusive relationships, that I really liked seeing in this type of book. I feel like that commentary is going to continue on throughout the series and is going to be so good and so important, and I'm really interested to see how it's addressed in the future books. I also read this for Booktubeathon. It was slow going, but I did it. I got it done. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is the story of Jane Grey. Jane was queen for 9 days and then she died, so this is kind of giving her a better story. I really liked the characters in this. They were really funny, and it was fun to read about them and their story. I liked the mix of real history with magic, with fiction. All of it was really well done and really well balanced. And I feel like I learned a lot about history because of this book. Like stuff about Mary Queen of Scots, it was good. Also, the references in this book. There were so many references and Easter eggs, which was so fun for me because my life is lived in references. References to movies, references to TV shows, references to books. I make references all the time. Most of the time, they all go over people's heads. So I loved seeing that in this book. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have got Yes Please by Amy Poehler. And I listened to this on audiobook, and I am so glad that I did because she has guest narrators, she has different little cameos, and it's so fun. I did flip through and look at some of the pictures while I was listening to the audiobook, so I wasn't like totally out of the loop with what was happening in the physical book. This is kind of like an autobiography of Amy Poehler, but not really. It has some elements of how she got started and where she is, but also has commentary on a lot of other things. If you like Amy Poehler, if you like her style of comedy, you will enjoy this book. It was fun hearing from her because she just seems so funny and honest and open, and I really liked seeing all these different sides of her. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we've got A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is about a girl who grew up in India who actually goes to a boarding school because her father wants her to get an education. Then he suddenly dies and she has to become a servant. Oh man, y'all. I freaking loved this book. I watched this movie when I was younger. I really loved that movie. I know Shannon loved it, which is part of the reason I probably watched it a lot, but the book is a bit different than the movie, and I really liked seeing those differences. The book was strong, the movie was strong, they're both really great in their own ways. Sarah is such a good main character. She's a little bit more gentle-spirited in the book, but I loved seeing how kind and how loving she was to people and just how she inspired other people to be kind and to make this world a better place. Even when she is feeling low, she still is loving to other people. I love her a lot. She's a great example for young girls. It was just so wonderful. It is a solid children's book. I would highly recommend it. I will definitely be reading this to my children if I have them in the future. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we've got A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is about a boy whose mother is very sick, and while he is trying to deal with that and the realization of that, he calls this monster into being who tells him stories about life and with life lessons. It's a really good commentary on grief. Man, oh man, was this book emotional. I'm getting really emotional just thinking about this book because I feel like it's so important to talk about grief with younger kids. I don't know that I would have young kids read this book because it's kind of scary at points. I feel like talking about grief is so important and so healthy, and this book does it so well, and I could cry like thinking about this book because it's so good. The ending, I was bawling. It was my last book that I read for Booktubeathon. I finished it on Sunday night and I was just in tears over this book. The movie is going to break me. I'm gonna break in a million pieces, but it's gonna be so good. Read A Monster Calls, please. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And last but not least, we have A Man Called Weve by Frederick Bachman. This freaking book, this is probably gonna be one of my favorite books of this year. I can already feel it. This is about a man called Weve, and it kind of tells his life story. He's kind of your stereotypical crotchety old man who is grumpy at the world, but it's funny, if you know what I'm saying? But he's kind of thrust into these relationships with people that he didn't want in the first place, but they end up changing him, and it's just so wonderful. I don't think a book has made me go from laughing to crying so quickly. Like, I was back and forth a lot. Weve is just such a good character, and his neighbors that move in next door are so phenomenal, and they just break open his walls, and I love it. I love it so much. I feel like I don't want to talk much about like the plot because it's just like his everyday life, and I don't really want to spoil anything that happens, but it was so phenomenal and so sweet and so endearing and so funny and just everything. I would definitely recommend the audiobook. It was really, really good. Just read this book too. It's really good. I love it a lot. It has a special place in my heart, and I want to reread it like right now. And those were all the books that I read in the month of July. Let me know down below what your favorite book you read was, or if you participated in Booktubeathon. Still catching up on comments from Booktubeathon. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Woo. Too hot. It's too hot, hot Betty. Gonna hold some books because I read a lot of books, and that's what we're gonna do. Yeah.